early 1945, Japan was being battered from the air. American prisoners were starting their 4th year in captivity.
The Japanese were suffering very, very badly, you know, right at the very end. They were hurting. We would go on short rations, but so did the Japanese.
Prisoners were given just enough food to keep them working, especially in the mines, the most dangerous work of all. Whatever was dangerous or mindless or difficult, the prisoners did, and they suffered for it. The survivors still remember the mines.
There wasn't a day that went by in a coal mine that somebody wasn't hurt. Men lost their legs, had their skulls crushed, had their backs broken. Men would break their arms on purpose rather than go down in the coal mine. The civilians didn't bother us, but as the bombings increased, they would throw stones at us and spit at us.
The bombing raids made the Japanese angry. This was worse. The ashes of Japanese servicemen being brought home in increasing numbers. Hatred for America increased, and the only Americans in Japan were the prisoners. It made survival that much more difficult, but by then, it was largely a matter of luck anyway.
If it hadn't have been for the guy next to me, who was a corpsman, I wouldn't be talking to you now. They brought the rice in, and I told him, I said, would you get my rice for me? He said, no way. He said, I'm not going to take care of it. He said, you're going to be dead tomorrow anyway. He started laughing. And the more he laughed, the madder I got. And I got up and I started walking a little bit more each day. And I got to where I could move around, and I got outside to where I could go to work. And then I started coming back. And this corpsman, he said, you know, if I hadn't gotten you mad, you wouldn't have made it, and I knew it.
Those who had made it this far had paid an awful price. They had lived as animals, worked as slaves. Their bodies were ruined, their minds dulled. They wondered whether, if they did survive and get home, they would ever be human again.
You know, in the outside world, a death of somebody that's close to you affects you very, very strongly. But after you see so many die, and they're dead people, they're corpses all around you, you become hardened to it. And it doesn't bother you, strangely enough. And you have to get hardened to it, or it would upset you terribly. And I guess we sort of all did that. But after we got to Japan, my good friend Henry Leitner developed pneumonia, double pneumonia. Henry just had a very high fever. And I looked up one morning, he was going out the doorway with his canteen cup in his hand, and I called to him and said, Henry, where are you going? He said, man, I'm dehydrated. I've got to have some of that snow, about a foot of snow on the ground. And I begged him to come back. I said, Henry, you can't stand that cold. And he said, I'm burning up. I've just got to cool down. So I guess that aggravated his pneumonia, and that night he died. His death brought me back to reality. While it was a sad, it did one thing for me. It made me realize I could cry.
They said bomb. We thought they meant bombs.
And it destroyed a whole city.
3 days later, Nagasaki got it.
The emperor has ordered the forces to surrender. The war is over.
The war's over.
our freedom. You can't describe it.
Gradually, it got sorted out. Prisoners were sent home. The Japanese were disarmed. The pieces were picked up. The Japanese conquest ended. The surrender papers were signed. It would never be the same, but at least the other side had to do the bowing. And instead of the court-martial General Wainwright had feared all those years, there were cheers. And in Washington, with some of his fellow survivors looking on, General Wainwright got the Congressional Medal of Honor and his 4th star from President Truman. Wainwright and all the others got one thing more: $1 a day for each day as a prisoner. $1.
I had a news reporter interview me on the boat coming back, and he asked me a specific question. Was it really as bad as they had heard? And my only answer to him was that if the truth were ever known and given out, the attitude of the American people is they wouldn't believe it.
How would they possibly know what we went through? There's no way they could. How could I tell them about walking around for 3 years with nothing but a G-string on, and hoping that I could get one handful of rice to survive that one day? And yet what was keeping me alive was the will to live. I wanted to live. I wanted to survive. I wanted to come home. And you can't explain it to people. Unless you live through these experiences, there's no way in God's green earth that they can understand it.
Outside Manila, there is an American military cemetery, the largest one in the Pacific. In the memorial, the names of those killed in the Pacific during World War II are listed. There are 36,000 of them. They are the ones whose bodies were never recovered. World War II is long ago. 42% of Americans today weren't even born when BATAAN and Corregidor fell. But if they came here, they might find their family name. Perhaps we ought to remember better than we do, but the world moves on. After the war, we needed the Japanese as allies against the Soviet Union. Japan was rebuilt. We buried our dead, passed out some medals, a little money, and moved on. In Europe during World War II, 1% of the American prisoners died. In the Pacific, 57% died. All of this is history, largely forgotten. All that remains is personal triumph.
You ask about heroes. There's no definition for that. But I think one of the greatest words in the English language is survivor. And that's what we are, as survivors.